Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing. Testing. I didn't hear anything. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, let's do this. I'm gonna check something. Unfortunately, one of my other companies. Let's see what we got going. All right, okay, well, the audio is actually pretty good. I like this. Got the new setup, and I hope you guys like the new camera. I'm actually outside in front of my fireplace. So let's see what we do. Got my Arizona. All right, now let's get into it. Let's go ahead and do that. Now, and as you see the title, and as you also see what Robin put in, it's a war against the poor. I've been saying this for literal years. And if you're new to the channel, yes, I have not changed that one bit. And we're getting ready to get into it because I've shown you several instances of whenever we had the officers that were going out and planting evidence. And we had one officer a couple weeks ago that was stealing from people that were cooperating and allowing him to search because they had nothing to hide. And we're forgetting that these police officers are actually humans. So, actually, let me take this off because it's echoing in my ear. So, today, what I'm going to talk about is just that. Because picture two people stopped by police with no lawful basis. Same unconstitutional stop, same officer, same street, same violation. One of them walks to court able to suppress what the officer found because the Constitution still functions for them. Stay with me. The other cannot. Not because the stop was lawful, not because the search was lawful, but because the officer ran a database check and found a warrant. It was tied to an unpaid financial obligation. It's called a poverty warrant. And in that moment, the Fourth Amendment becomes conditional. Strong for those that have money, weak for those without it. The document being broken down today says it plainly. Fourth Amendment protections may vary based on wealth. The poor get it only in sympathetic version of it. Want you to understand that. Because when we do these things, a lot of times we forget that these police officers are being incentivized to stop people. I literally did a story 3 days ago where a Chicago police officer stated, "We stop people in poor neighborhoods because they are less likely to hold us accountable. The more affluent neighborhoods, because I even spoke about the one I live in currently, I have I've seen a police officer 2 times since being over here. Twice. And I think the dude lives here. It's not because they are patrolling the area, because there's a high presence. I don't ever see them. And the sirens that you will hear during my shows, there's a fire department literally right on the other side of my fence. It is literally right next to me. Those are the sirens you hear. It is not police cars. And these are the things where I speak about it. Just because you're not doing anything does not mean that the police will not stop you. Because we used to actually call them dope boy cars. Because you riding around in a Cutlass, police are going to stop you. My father even gave me the warning of no more than 3 heads in the car. Why? Because that's gang activity in certain parts of Georgia. And if you actually looked at me, we very rarely had 3 heads in the car. Very rarely. And it was even worse when you looked at the fact that I was at one point making significant money, legitimately. I wore a shirt and tie to work. But because I drove a 750 IL, I was stopped constantly by police. I traded that car in and went and bought a Buick LeSabre. Didn't have any problem with police wearing a shirt and tie. But when I was in a luxury vehicle, I was constantly stopped. Why? Because even though it appeared that I had the money, they did not appear that I should have that money. Because even in that, I also did not have the time. I'm going to say that again. I didn't have the time to go after them. Later, whenever I became, I don't even know what you would call it, I became an entrepreneur. And I started working for myself, I made time. That's what made them stop doing the things that they were doing to me. And even in that context, it's because I found means. Not because I had it, but because I found it. Because I enforced not only the Fourth Amendment, I enforced the fact that I'm not one of those people that you're going to do this to and it not have repercussions behind it. Because in today's episode, I'm going to talk about the war on the poor and how it operates as a profit system, how it manufactures warrants, and how it bleeds into criminal defense in ways most people underestimate. The people that I'm talking about are the ones that are, if you're not doing anything, the police won't bother you. Those are the people I'm talking to today because it's amazing. I'm putting up these videos. I'm pointing out. I'm even doing, I don't think most people are even watching these bad cop videos I'm putting out, where these cops are literally violating people at traffic stops. Where you have a cop that SA'd several women, one in Houston, you had 2 in Virginia, you had 1 down in Florida. And this was in the last 2 weeks. I'm not talking about that was happening just randomly. This is happening like recently, but it's not in the paper because they want you to keep the image that these people are good, and that if you're not doing anything, that nothing's going to happen to you. Because basically, let me get into it. This episode is built around the Harvard Law Review note that connects 3 things most lawyers discuss separately. Legal financial obligations, because a lot of times in one of my earlier videos, I want to say it was probably about my 5th or 6th podcast, where I spoke about how much freedom can you afford? And it talks about in the legal financial obligation is fines, fees, cost, and surcharges. All of those are parts of freedoms that are done in there. Failure to pay enforcement, warrants, contempt, short-term jail, because I talk about people that are the actual system that's developed where we're talking about most people live paycheck to paycheck. And because they live paycheck to paycheck, that any disruption to that becomes a disruption not only to their regular life, but to their actual finances. And in the midst of that, we're going to go into creating a different system that actually punishes those who are attempting to protect themselves when they don't have those means. And the Fourth Amendment doctrine itself. Suppression, attenuation, let me say that correctly, because I know I'm going to get it in the comments. Attenuation and the taint analysis. T-A-I-N-T, taint. Not the one that you're thinking about, but the analysis of it. But it's the understanding of how it's framed, right? The note frames the big picture. Even though the Constitution supposedly protects indigent people from incarceration solely because they're poor, courts and systems have found workarounds because they're still doing it, because it is a for-profit system. These are businesses that we are becoming interacted with. And notice what I spoke this information comes from. This comes from Harvard Law Review. For those that want to say I'm just pulling stuff out of my ass, this is where we got it from. This is a actual study. This is actually a reputable spot. But when you go to critique whatever it is I'm saying, go to Harvard and talk to them about it. And this note says the system posture towards indigent defendants is not neutral. I'm going to say that one more time. Harvard stated in their note, the system, which is our policing system, postures towards indigent defendants, and it is not neutral. Because I actually said this once before, and I was waiting for someone to pick it out, and nobody did. They just kind of gloss over it. When you're talking about a certain number of people committing the 50% of crime, I told her, said it is statistically impossible unless you are looking for them. I'm going to say that one more time. You can't be 17% of the population committing 50% of all crime unless you are being hunted, because it's statistically impossible without you being hunted. When I talk about how can I ever be unarmed because you weaponize my skin, this is what I'm talking about. And duck the police, shoot me an email. Because this is again one of the things I'm talking about. Because they're taking simplicity and having you missing, and now you're a statistic. Because they're eating you up in the system simply because they can, because they're putting you in positions not to succeed. And a lot of times what people like to speak on is the anomaly, not the actuality. They want to speak about the outlier. Because I can talk about, oh my, I don't live like this. I was hunted, literally. To the point to where I said, you know what, I might as well do it anyway. Until I said, you know what, let me start fighting these fools so they can leave me alone, because I understood how bullies work. When you start hitting them in the mouth, and the fact was when I started hitting them, I started winning. So I got better and better and better, and now you know, they leave me alone. And I get to go back and do the things that I'm doing now, like sit in my backyard and do a podcast. These are the things that we all have to think about when we're talking about these mechanisms. Don't just think, oh, if you're not doing something, the police won't bother you. Harvard just told you that they are hunting indigent defendants, and it's not neutral. It treats indigent defendants with contempt. I actually played a video, and I talked about the police apologists. And I said, these police apologists are going to find a way to okay what these police officers did, even though I read not only the 911 officers' transcript, but the transcript from the police officers, which was their words themselves, before they killed an innocent man. I'm going to say that one more time. I read out loud on a podcast I'm going to say that one more time. I read what was out loud on a podcast. I then read the 911 dispatch records. I then read what the police officers stated, what they said in their own words before they went and killed an innocent man. And the police apologists found a way to justify what these people did. Even though they knew these police officers were murderers. Excuse me. I'm gonna take a drink because I want y'all to let that marinate. Because if you're not doing anything, which this young man wasn't, the police won't bother you, but they did. And not only did they bother him, they took his life. Just because. Arizona is really, really good. I appreciate y'all. This is Arizona RX, and y'all need to figure out how to sponsor your boy. Anyway, this matters in criminal defense because poverty enforcement doesn't stay in the collections lane. It becomes the pipeline that triggers arrest, creates search incidents, and disables suppression. This is the court's outcome. That is the leverage that they're using. That is liberty because they are choosing. I'm going to say that one more time. They are choosing to allow your rights to be violated. They are choosing not to vigorously defend you. They are choosing to allow the prosecutor to run ramshot over your case. They are choosing. So let's not let this, because here's the thing. It was initially set up for people that look like me. It began to spill over to the other 80%. Why? Because the war isn't on a skin tone anymore. It's on the poor and disenfranchised. Now they're allowing it to leak over unto the children of the poor. But again, that's going to be something I'm going to talk about later. Because the one thing we're going to learn in 2026 is that I'm going to turn to DJ Khaled because I got the mics out here. I got everything I need out here. I'm out here. Let me turn on another light. Want you to understand, I'm in these streets. I'm letting you know that this is for real. Whenever you're supporting Supreme Decisions, this is what you get with Supreme Decisions. Because I'm not just doing this for my health. I want you to understand exactly what it is that I'm trying to do. Because this is the real information that you need. Because in order to protect yourself, that is a bright light. In order to protect yourself, you have to understand nuances. You have to understand the outliers of it. Because at the end of the day, this is a psychological battle. And the more information you have makes it easier for you to actually move in that situation. So now, understand the profit logic. The fines and fees as they are funding, not punishment. Okay. Harvard's note is the diagnosis is blunt. People are fined because fines generate revenue. Because fines are part of a rational punishment or a rehabilitation theory. Because people accept it. I talked about, what is this? Down here in Texas. Where it was a city, I can't even remember the name of the city at this moment. But again, if you go back and listen to my podcast, I literally did a podcast on it. Where I spoke about this one city here in Texas. It is, I really went blank right then. 250 people in the city. The city generates more than $1 million a year. and there's 50 cops. So the crazy part is, if it's 250 people, how are they generating over $1 million a year? Because they're writing traffic tickets in this little ass town. Because it's literally a little city that you ride through. And then come to find out, all 50 of these police officers, including the sheriff who had a warrant for his arrest and lied on his application, all of them were bad cops. Every last one of them. How did because see, most people miss I'm going to go into this too a little bit. Tennessee had more than 600 false DUI stops in a calendar year. 600 false DUI stops and arrests. Do you know how people found out? One man said, I'm not going to sit here and listen to this. 1 out of 600. Now, out of the 600 that was found, I think 18 are suing. Just let that sink in. 600 people were arrested, not for being drunk, not for doing anything, because you know police won't bother you unless you're doing something. 600 people that were arrested, stopped and arrested for something they did not do, and had their vehicles towed because they weren't impaired to generate revenue for a city. But again, if you're not doing anything, police won't bother you. Or at least that's what they want us to believe. Because if we understand that's what they're doing, then they have to change their mindset on what police really are. I'm going to say that one more time, because if we don't accept it for what it is, they have to change their mindset on what police really are. Because see, now, understand the scale is not small, because again, 250 people, $1 million in revenue. The scale is not small. A recent estimate totals outstanding fines and fees nationwide are over $27.6 billion. I'm going to say that one more time. A recent estimate places outstanding fines and fees nationwide at over $27.6 billion. Now keep in mind, we're only at tier 1. We haven't gone through the other 2 tiers. Let that sink in. We're already at $27 billion, excuse me. Just the fines and fees in America places this in the top 10%, actually in the top 10 of the 200 countries worldwide. Our policing system, just from fines and fees, places the United States in the top 10 in front of 190 other countries. This is what I'm talking about when people are talking about shutting down the system. This is the system. 1 tier, we're in the top 10 of all the world. Man, that fire's hitting, boy. The enforcement tools, warrants, state issued tens of thousands of warrants each year for unpaid fines. And Harvard emphasizes the tracking is weak. Courts often don't even categorize them cleanly. Just like that, they might, because you remember what I talked about in Houston? Literally, he went back to just 1 charge. The young man went back to 1 charge. To 2020, he found over 400 where the courts were actually charging people with just anything. They were overcharging, just adding charges to people and just putting it under anything. And these people were being found guilty of things that they were not guilty of. Whoops. Whoops. Because what's happening to that? If you're not doing anything, police won't bother you. But they weren't doing anything. They got things stolen from them. They weren't doing anything. They were stopped. They had evidence planted on them. They weren't doing anything, and they. Let me get a little bit of my Arizona. That's actually pretty good right there. Next time I'm gonna have some yak because I think this is yak conversation right here. I want you to understand something. This is why I don't listen to people that don't understand how the system actually works. This is why I don't listen to that. Oh well, if you don't do it, it don't happen. And again, I love the fact that Duck's on here. They'll cover it up with plea agreements. They're telling you to plead to something that you could have possibly might have done for convenience or what have you. But they'll add something else in there just to boost it up a little bit. And then I talk about how the uniform is designed to coerce. The interrogation room is designed to coerce. The interrogations, even at a traffic stop, are designed to coerce. I actually just did a police tactic. A police officer noted if you look at the comments, the police officer noted, I do this all the time. Why? Because it's not about law. They're making a conscious decision to irritate you to get a reaction so they can claim something, not because you've done something. It's not about law. And anybody who thinks that it's about law is an absolute idiot. I'm going to say that one more time because I want it to resonate. If you think our system is currently about law, you are an absolute idiot. Because again, I've done videos and police are in the comments saying, I do that all the time. Telling you, this is a psychological game because they're being rewarded for doing so. I had a police officer say that we are targeting people that don't have money. We don't police like this in the affluent areas. But then you'll tell me if you're not doing something, police won't bother you. But yet the police are telling you otherwise and you're ignoring them. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. Police are telling you they're doing the things that I'm telling you they're doing, and you're ignoring the police who you're protecting. If that's not idiocy, I don't know what it is. Harvard is telling you that the police is doing this, and you're ignoring it. The police are agreeing with Harvard, and you're ignoring it. That's why I told you this isn't for everybody else. This is for those who say stupid stuff like, if you're not doing anything, the police won't bother you. This is not, they actually just follow law. And I'm constantly telling you, this is about revenue generation. 250 people, $1 million. And hopefully I can find that story because I'll post it in the community section. Because I did, if you go through the podcast, it's within the last 4 or 5. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I did the story on it because I spoke about how outrageous that is. Because if it's not a business for revenue, how does 250 people generate $1.2 million in fees and fines? Especially when the entire police force is criminals, including the chief who lied on his application to be chief and had an active arrest warrant out of Florida. Because again, just like I tell people, I say a lot of crazy stuff. It sounds outrageous. It sounds outlandish. Look it up. People tell me I'm just speaking about stuff. I'm just pulling it out of thin air. I guess Harvard is thin air. Because, again, I understand if you have to accept what I'm saying, you have to change your ideals on what your life actually is. I get it. Because I know the truth hurts. And this is pain time. Because, again, I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing this as often as I possibly can. Because I want people to understand how this actually works. Because if you're going to praise the system, this is what you're praising. If you're not going to ask for change in this system, this is what you're accepting. If you're looking for convenience, well, I'm going to just pay the fine. This is what you're supporting. This is the business you're supporting. You're okay with them doing the things that they're doing. See, a lot of people say, oh, you hate police. No. And and again, you can listen to all my stuff. It goes back to 2017. I don't hate police officers. I hate bad policing. Yes, clip that. I don't hate police. I hate bad policing. Because if we're going to have the conversation, let's have the conversation. If we're going to have it, let's have it. But let's not act like it's not skewed. Let's not pretend that it's something that it's not. So, let me get in because I'm getting off. I'm going off on a tangent. This is why I don't do live shows. Now it's time to get into the Red Bull. Anyway. This is the operating loop. Access to financial sanctions. Add fees upon fees. And Doug, I want you to tell me if any of this is going where it's not supposed to go. Because again, let me start. This is the operating loop. Access to financial sanctions. Adding fees upon fees. Predict non-payment. Why? Because you're living paycheck to paycheck. They trigger warrants, and then those warrants trigger arrest. Extract payments through fear, through jail, and what my man Duck said, coercion, and then rinse and repeat, recidivism. Because if you're broke, and then I stop you, and I create something, you're stuck. Here's a fun fact, because again, this is also a podcast I did. I did this about 2 years ago. In our jailing system, we have 2.2 million people. 80% of those 2.2 million people that are in our jailing system, 80% are there because they can't make bail. Not because they've been convicted of anything, but because they are in poverty. They are living paycheck to paycheck. And then what happens? They take plea deals for things they didn't do and have charges added to them. They're doing it because they're being coerced. Because I'm actually getting ready to do a story. I've been meaning to do this story for about a month and a half. Where this young man, his father was going to the airport. He lived with this young man lived with his father. His father lived with this young man, however you want to put it. Young man wakes up, father's gone. He calls the police. The police convince him and his neighbors that this man has killed his father. They bring in dogs, they bring in his best friend, they do all this other stuff, but you know what they never did? Look for his father. Now keep in mind, he called them for help because he wasn't doing anything. And if you're not doing anything, the police won't do nothing because they won't bother you. They charged him with murder one. His father came to the police station when he found out. I'm going to say that one more time. They charged him with the murder of his own father. They got his friends to come and convince him to take a plea. They even brought this man's dog and said the dog don't want you to act like you didn't kill him. They wrote up a plea. Remember, all these things I've actually talked about. There's actually shorts on this. To convince this man to take a plea for a murder they never investigated, for a body they didn't have, and then this man's father shows up, and they were reluctant to drop charges. Remember, I talked about the officer that was planting evidence, and he got caught not only by his supervisor, but by the district attorney. And the district attorney said, well, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to challenge. No, these cases should be dismissed because all of the evidence was tainted. Literally all the evidence was not secured. Not a joke, not a half step. It was literally the case. And, you could possibly might. If you don't have any evidence, how do you have? But again, it's because if the police don't do it, if you're not doing anything, police not going to bother you. And our system is fair. See how stupid I sound when I say it? And that's actually done on purpose. Because a moron would believe that it's okay for them not to do their job properly. Because it's always amazing to me, because I had a conversation with a cop. He told me that I should understand about how dangerous his job is. And I asked the question, I said, okay, cool. I should understand how dangerous your job is, even though it's not in the top 30. I said, but at what point did you consult me when you were deciding to apply to become a police officer? I don't remember the phone call that I got before you went to training for 8-9 weeks. I did not remember being invited to your graduation where you threw up a ceremony and signed this oath to support and defend the Constitution. But you want me to understand, because I'm asking you to do your job properly, that you did all of that for. Because it amazes me the amount of police officers that have never read the Constitution of their state. It amazes me the number of police officers that have never read their actual oath. It amazes me when police officers say, well, I work for such and such. I don't work for you. Your oath says otherwise. And when you are that disconnected, you are showing incompetence and the inability to perform your duty, which is why I thank police officers when they do that, because it makes it easier for whenever I go to write up this information to go to post, it makes it easier for them to take it because you've acknowledged that you are incompetent. I'm going to say that one more time. I let you acknowledge that you are incompetent just by saying that you don't work for the people. You work for XYZ Police Department. You are acknowledging incompetence, which means you are unable to perform the duties that you are sworn to uphold. And yes, I'm speaking in this tone and this term because there are a bunch of police officers that follow me. And here's the great part about it. I actually liked it because I put up a post where I talk about how I do checks every morning for police officers with disciplinary issues. Had one police officer say, you know what, check me out. Sent me his information. Because I don't just do the skim over. I do the deep dive. I look where they don't want nobody looking at. And he laughed and said, check me every day. And I hit him back. I said, I didn't find anything, and I guarantee you ride by yourself. And he laughed. He goes, yes, I do. Because I understand what a good officer looks like. He didn't have any shoots on his record. He doesn't pull his gun because he's not a coward. Yes, I said it. Because the one thing that irritated me more than anything else whenever I lived in Atlanta, Fulton County, DeKalb County, was the amount of police officers, whenever they would come up to the car, they would come up to the car with their hands on their gun, and I haven't even said anything. Haven't done anything. Haven't been aggressive. I just pulled over. To me, that is cowardice. If the first thing, you have 9 options that are non-lethal, and your first duty is the preservation of life. If the first thing you touch is the one that takes life, you are a coward. And no, I didn't pause for dramatic effect. I wanted to make sure you understood exactly where I stood. I don't want any confusion about my words. But you know what? I'm going to actually do this too, because I'm getting off point again, because this is why I don't do live shows, because I start talking and then I get into this. So, here, let me go there. Bring it back, Richard. There we go. All right. Harvard adds the racial overlay. A disproportionate share of this debt burden is borne by communities of color. Now, I'm gonna throw this one out there, because I'm pretty sure someone that lives in 8 Mile can attest to the exact same situation. I can attest to those that live here where I'm at in Lower Valley. They can attest to this situation. I can talk about the ones down in SWAT, Southwest Atlanta, Metropolitan Boulevard, Stewart Ave, for those that know better. I can attest for that, because they can speak to that. And a lot of that, there's a lot of different skin tones in there. But you know what the commonality is? Poverty. That's the hood. These are the things that I'm talking about. The war is on the poor. Why is disproportionate? Because I talk again about the mathematically impossible statistic. I'm going right back to the exact same thing. It goes right back in correlation of the communities. Why are they communities? Because they're planned that way. Because if you go down to here's the thing, you don't accidentally roll into the hood. But I guarantee you, when you get there, you know you're there. I'm going to say that one more time. You don't accidentally roll into a couple of these places, but you know you're there when you're there. Why? Because it is planned that way. It is created that way. The community is set up that way. Always understand that. These are not accidental spots. A police officer is not going to accidentally. Just give you an example. Like I said, for the most part of my life, I've been in upper middle class areas. Well, I have friends that live in $1 million homes. Do you know what I never see in the $1 million homes? Police. Unless they live there. Upper middle class. You know who I rarely see, not never, but rarely see? Police. Unless they live there. But when I lived in the hood, you know who I saw every day? Police. Whether they lived there or not, they were there. I knew most of them by first name. Hell, I got arrested so much in DeKalb County. Yes, I said it. I got arrested so much in DeKalb County, I knew most of the police officers there. Because if it wasn't from being locked up, it was from being in a strip club, or it was from being at a gym, or it was because, again, they were there in the community I was in. They was everywhere I was at. And to act as if these things don't exist will be moronic, because they're doing this on purpose. These are, let me get right. Here go the concrete examples. Cobb County, thank you, Duck. Cobb County. Cobb County at one time, certain spots of Cobb County, he was all right. Now Cobb County, period, trash. I actually booked a hotel. Let me tell you the story real quick. I actually booked a hotel in Cobb County, I want to say 2024, because I was going to come to Atlanta because I booked late and I wanted to go down to the Battery. Cobb County is just a hop, not even a hop and skip, it's just a hop to the Battery. While I was on the phone confirming my reservation with and it was the Marriott in Cobb County, right there off of 75. Or was it 85? It's either 75 or 85, but it's right there. Matter of fact, it was a Marriott off of 85. The first one when you get into Cobb County. They literally, the manager told me to hold on because there was a shooting in the lobby. I canceled my reservation. I didn't need to go to Atlanta that bad. I'm good. Whatever you think it is, it is. Not going there. But the police are no better than the people that were doing the shooting. And I mean that as a collective. No, it's not everyone, but I haven't gone through a lot of the police departments where it wasn't at least 80. I think of all the police departments I've gone through thus far, because even I talked about Richmond County. Richmond County, there was a chick that was literally on her body camera. They're literally doing a story on her now. I did Bad Police on her like literally months ago. They're doing a full story on her. Why? Because she's a gang member who's selling dope inside the prison. And she's a beat cop. I'm going to say that one more time. She was literally a gang member and selling dope inside Fantasy Road. Yeah. I've been to a couple of these spots. Anyway. And let me get back on task because, again, I can do this all night. But I'm not going to. But let me get back to what I was talking about, because at the end of the day, the examples that I want to give you, the available data points show how massive this has become in practice. 4 Massachusetts small courts issued 1,325 debt-based warrants just last year. New York City had 1.2 outstanding. Oh, I skipped over the main word. 1.2 million outstanding warrants for debt. Texas, 5 million warrants for unpaid court debts since 2018. Let me repeat that, because that's my state. That's where I'm at right now. Texas issued nearly 5 million warrants for unpaid court debts. This is not personal responsibility. This is governance by collection. This isn't one of those oversights. Please don't think of it that way. Right? Understand, this is business. And the question that Duck posed, jailed for debt in Texas, is that legal? Let me back this up. I'm gonna hit you. I'm gonna hit you with one. The only place that is actually legal is Nevada. There is literally a thing in Nevada that is referred to as debtor's prison. It's short-term It's what it is, but it's only in Nevada. Now, will they call it a debt in Texas when you're arrested? No. They'll dress it up, as you said, in other they'll dress it up in other charges instead of calling it a debt. Because they can't collect it if it's a debt. But if you have other charges, which they use the fear tactics on, which they use the coercion on, which they use all these other things on, it's legal. So, long and short of your question, yes, it's legal, technically. Because most people, when they're using the fear tactic, which is psychological, not legal, when they're using coercion, which is psychological, not legal, when they're using inconvenience, which is psychological, not legal, they create a legal situation because you have done it through acceptance. And I hope that answered that one. And I hope those that are here listening had that answer as well or understood the answer. Now, a key move used to defend these systems is it's only a few days. They try to minimize what's happening to you. They're trying to legitimize their inconveniencing you. They're trying to legitimize their and justify their coercion with you. They're trying to convince you to accept their fuckery. And I hope you understand that. The and Harvard answer that framing is legally convenient and factually dishonest. Again, I'm going to say that one more time. Harvard's answer to it's only a few days. Harvard's. That framing is legally convenient and factually dishonest. What did I just say to Duck? This is exactly what I just said to Duck. Because they're going to dress it up and force your acceptance. One of my favorite movies is V for Vendetta. One of my favorite parts is the speech that he gave. Your willful, unfeathered consent. When you accept this foolishness, when you accept what they're doing, when you accept all of the things that come on with their fuckery, you become part of that system. This is what I speak about. This is what I teach against. This is the thing that I'm talking about because, again, it's the actuality of what is actually happening. It states that jailing poor people, even briefly, is disastrous in effect. Arrest alone can cost a person their job, their home, and the record makes future housing and employment more difficult. What did I just say? And they're living paycheck to paycheck. This is how they keep you dependent. This is why they give you those stimulus checks to make sure you're still dependent, which is why they check to see your response to, we're not giving any SNAP this month, because they want to make sure you are steadily hooked in on this dependency. Because as long as you're not feeding yourself, they got you. As long as their hooks are in you, they got you. Because one of the things that I learned early in life, everybody that helps you isn't your friend. And everyone that walks away from you isn't your enemy. Because if I teach you how to fish, you can go get the fish on your own, which is why I'm walking away, because I showed you how to do it. If you're making a choice to wait for somebody else to feed you, you're always going to be dependent on someone else feeding you because you don't want to feed yourself. And that is a dangerous spot to be in, which is why a lot of people are doing the things that they're doing now, which is why there are a lot of people out here accepting deals that they didn't do, which is why when you have that pressure put on you, which is why this is a psychological game and not a law for one. That knows how I did that? Understand the context of this. This is done very much on purpose. So this is why I deal and I actually this is why I teach the way I do. This is why let me get something because again I need to calm down a little bit. And for those that are wondering, which is crazy, I did not realize this was that color. Was that Juneberry Red Bull? It is surprisingly delicious. Oh, that is crazy. Anyway, it's not just economics. Arrests come with indignities and invasions of privacy, and most jail conditions are bleak, especially in Georgia, especially in Arizona, especially Alabama. In short, these arrests, while inconvenient, create long-term damage. Because I'm gonna give you a quick one, then I'm gonna kind of wrap this up a little bit. When I was charged with RICO, one in 2008, I was actually trying to flow between keeping my license in for being an insurance agent, having a bunch of kids, at the time, 3 living with me, a couple that weren't, and trying to actually be. Hell, I'm not even gonna say I was a good husband. I was a decent. I was there. you know? But going through all these things, and then going from 2008 to 2010, and literally having a life transformation, and having everybody around me not understand anything I was doing, and then to be charged with RICO, racketeering influence corrupt organization, for those who don't know what that is, and then to be stated that I was the head of an organization, to then being put on these FBI lists, then to be put on the no-fly list. It was a whole lot of things. But I also realized that while I was able to kind of maintain and fly through because I was always feeding myself, I looked at the effect that it took on others that was with me that was charged. One is one of my older brothers. And even to this day, it's 13, 14 years later? It happened 2012. We're getting ready to go to 26, so we're almost, 13, 14 years later. My brother is still going through those effects. And the context of that is the fact that, just like I just spoke about, it affects his housing ability. It affects his job ability. Why? Not because he can't feed himself, but he can't get to a position to do the things not only that he's good at, but that the things that he knows the best. Because anytime he goes to have someone else feed him, and I hate to use it like that, but that's exactly what it is, that comes up. He was found not guilty. In fact, the charges were dropped on him. He never went to trial. But because he was arrested for it, he literally lost everything. He lost his house. He lost his wife. He lost access to his children. He lost literally everything because of an arrest. Not because he did anything, not because he went to trial, not because he was guilty. the arrest affected his entire life. And most people don't catch that. Because, again, the long lasting effect of just the arrest itself creates the poverty cycle. It's rinse and repeat. And even at that time, my brother wasn't the person that always got in trouble. There was no recidivism from him. Has he been stopped by police? I don't even think he's been stopped by police since we won the case, or since the case was dismissed against him. But he was put in a cycle, and it's affected him. And most people think if you're not doing anything, that's the lie. That's the lie they become comfortable with. When in fact, the only thing he did was know me. That was literally his only crime. You know your brother. That's it. But understanding that is now getting to the meat and potatoes of this. So, like I said, I want to throw that out there because most people never catch what actually goes on with this. And Harvard centers a Supreme Court triad designed to stop incarceration for inability to pay. Give you 3 court cases. And one of these I've actually done a show on. I'll do a show on the other 2, and I may bring it up. But again, one of these is great for probation. The first one is William v. Illinois. Second one is Tate v. Short. And the one that I was just talking about, I've done videos on, and I spoke about how it's great for probation, is Bearden v. Georgia. Why? Because I was in Georgia, so I had to look that up. Anyway, the heart of Bearden is the willfulness, the ability to pay inquiry. Before incarceration, courts must inquire into why payment did not happen and consider alternative ways the person cannot pay despite bona fide efforts. These are all vague terms. Because an effort is whatever I justify it to be. Because if I don't like your bona fide effort, but again, if this charge is the reason why I can't get employment, and me not being able to get employment is the reason I'm not paying, you can't incarcerate me for that because you created this conundrum. So now you have to, but again, most people don't use this, so they don't force the system to fix itself. Because even in this, the Bearden's rule operationally, if the person can pay and refuses, incarceration may be on the table. Because again, if you have the ability to pay and you still refuse, there has to be another way other than jailing you. Because if they jail you, they still don't get money. Hence the mob, Gestapo tactics, where they tell you they'll beat you up, but they're not going to kill you because you can't collect payments from a dead person. That's exactly how our system works. If the person cannot pay, incarceration as punishment for non-payment violates fundamental fairness. So again, you cannot incarcerate someone who can't pay unless you're in Vegas. And Harvard describes this as a mens rea light requirement. Non-payment incarceration requires the person to have means and choose not to pay inside the context of Bearden. Because again, there has to be validation to why you are not paying. Right? So now, so what should be the end? So that should be the end of Desert's prisons, except for Vegas. But it wasn't, because systems learn to comply with the letter while defeating the spirit. The workaround: turning non-payment into contempt, strict liability, and the process. The timing loophole: we didn't jail you for non-payment, we jailed you for the warrant. Remember Duck, you remember the question that you asked? My response was they're going to change it to something else. The loophole that Harvard spoke about, the Supreme Court case requires the ability to pay on the inquiry before sentencing someone for to incarceration for failure to pay. But they didn't explicitly require the inquiry before arresting someone for non-payment of related warrants. Whoops. We didn't arrest you for non-payment. We arrested you for the warrant. This is the workaround. This is what I was just telling you about. People fall behind because of poverty and being locked up. The court issues the warrant. Police arrest. The person sits in jail. Why did I say 80% of people are sitting in jail? For non-payment. Only later does the court decide willfulness. Harvard then regimens insidious turning payment into a strict liability crime, assuming the only reason a person doesn't pay is because they don't want to. Because even in the context of this, right? I love that. Pre-trial probation. So they're telling you to convict yourself before you even have trial. Gotta love it. Pennsylvania, to show how the ability to pay can be delayed until after arrest. Rule, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, 706 says no commitment for failure to pay unless there is a hearing the defendant is able to pay. Say that one more time. Pennsylvania Rule 706 says no commitment for failure to pay unless there is a hearing for the defendant is and defendant is found to be able to pay. But the note highlights the trap. The ability to pay analysis can occur only at the incarceration stage, not earlier. So they lock you up first, then they determine if you can pay, meaning a delinquency can trigger a warrant, an arrest, and over 3 days in jail waiting for that hearing. Then advocates challenge it under Bearden. But the Pennsylvania Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality even though indigent defendants can temporarily be incarcerated before the hearing. And someone not going to work for a week that's living paycheck to paycheck can now be behind on bills, they're behind on rent, they're behind on, they're possibly losing their job just a week. Let alone there are most people that'll get arrested that are in that stage that will lose their job because they've been arrested. Understand that. So that's not the side issue. That is the state's authority to that is the state's way of authorizing a coercive seizure and building a pipeline that begins with poverty and ends with custody before any meaningful adjudication of willfulness. And even one of my favorite ones, Utah v. Strieff. I'm dropping these cases in there because I want you guys, whenever you go back and watch this and listen to it, you understand that I'm still giving you substance. Stop in, stop out. Because I want you to actually be able to understand and look up the stuff that I'm saying to you. The next move in the doctrine is why do warrants for unpaid LFOs change suppression outcomes? Fourth Amendment enforcement relies on the exculpatory rule and fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. Deterrence by denying government the benefit of unconstitutional conduct. But the court carved exceptions citing substantial social cost. Don't worry about it. I'm going to let you know what that is because it means it's a whole lot of nothing. And not wanting to set the guilty free and the dangerous at large. One of those exceptions is attenuation. Strieff, unconstitutional stop plus the warrant equal no suppression. Now, Strieff is the hinge. In Strieff, the respondent was stopped without probable cause or reasonable suspicion. Now, if you go back and look at the case, they were actually waiting for Strieff to go home. Strieff never went to the house. Just understand it. He never went where they thought he was going to go, and they were like, "Oh, well, we got to do something." So they did the unconstitutional stop, and I'm going to say this: Strieff fought this wrong because the warrant, they did have a warrant. The warrant became invalid because of how it was executed. Again, it was fought wrong. But again, the respondent was stopped, which was Strieff, without probable cause or reasonable suspicion, and everyone conceded it was unconstitutional. That means the police knew they had screwed up. The officer ran his name, discovered an outstanding arrest warrant, and the case becomes, does the warrant attenuate the taint of the illegal stop? Now, this is where I'm going to explain to you the poverty taint concept. Now, here's what makes the Harvard argument devastating. Edward Strieff warrant was based on a financial obligation he could not pay a parking ticket. That was the outstanding one, a parking ticket. That is the taint of poverty because the mechanism that blocks constitutional remedies. The conclusion that Harvard drew explicitly, poor people are more likely to have failure to pay warrants. After Strieff, that means less able to suppress evidence after unconstitutional stop if the warrant is discovered. Because, again, because he did not have means to stop them from doing the things they were doing. Because he didn't have access to an attorney or someone to constitutionally enforce what he was saying. They overrode him and they railroaded him through the courts. Because in effect, the Fourth Amendment protects vary by wealth. The poor gets insipid versions. If your poverty generates warrants, your poverty also generates fewer constitutional remedies. Because that, again, goes back to how much freedom can you afford? Right? And I hate to bring it up like that, but these are the actualities of it. This ain't the reality. This is the actuality of it. Because I could say some nice words. Oh, it looks like, could feel, but none of that means anything if I'm not telling you the truth. So, now, Sotomayor dissent, draws and drawers of warrants and who they target. The dissent matters because it describes reality, not fantasy. Justice Sotomayor described outstanding warrants as surprisingly common, with drawers and drawers full of warrants for traffic and ordinance violations. Where all them killers at that they talking about they looking for? Where all that danger at that they talking about? Because we talking about traffic and ordinances. Billions of dollars. These speeders, these jaywalkers, and makes it explicit what's tactic in that dissent. Those drawers are disproportionately filed with warrants for indigent people. So if you're indigent, you're probably in that drawer. The solution, Beck v. Elmore County, and this is in Idaho. Beck's facts, misdemeanor, small statutory fine, massive add-ons, then jail. What did Doug talk about? The massive add-ons. Harvard's solution is a state Supreme Court decision, which is Beck. Beck pled guilty to a non-violent misdemeanor with a statutory fine cap. Worked at Burger King, asked for fines to be waived or reduced, and the court refused, leaving her liable for $638.50. Don't seem like a whole lot, right? But she works at Burger King. Unless she's the manager, she's not making that. And she's barely making more than that per month. And that's after cost and restitution was added. Particularly, she fell behind. The county issued a contempt warrant. She was arrested in a different county, held, and took 4 days to transfer her back. This is how low level becomes life destroying. Wage work plus court debt plus enforcement delay in custody. This is how these warrants are created. This is how the cycle of recidivism is. Because now she will be considered a repeat offender. Why? Because this is what the warrant arrest will be considered a second arrest. See the lies you've been told? Because in Beck, they never told you what she was arrested for in the other county for. Other than she was contacted in a new county because she had fell behind. That don't mean she was doing anything wrong. But the police still bothered her. She still got arrested. Beck was held on the warrant without a willfulness check. You can't issue contempt warrants for failure to pay without determining willfulness, meaning inquiry to why she failed to pay. Maybe because she was working at Burger King. Just throw that out there. Because just to give you an idea, that 338, she would need 3 of those per month to just pay my rent. So if you're living anywhere with any type of convenience or niceness, or hell, just a good living spot, that's going to take up most of, if not all, of that 638. And even because I had to break this down because a young man was trying to explain to me about the $15 an hour. $15 an hour, 40-hour weeks, that's $600. 600 times 4, that's $2,400 per month. Now you take that because now you're in a different tax bracket. You're taking what, 18% out? That's going to leave you with what? $1,700 bucks? So if you live somewhere where that's $1,000, you have $700 left for gas, car insurance, car payments. If you have, let's say you don't have a car payment. You still have groceries. You still have lights. You still have water. Still, most people have internet. You still have these other bills. So even at $15 an hour, you're still just getting by. And where in that scenario would she be able to come up with an extra $638? Let's just say that. Because those are the questions that nobody ever asks. Right? So, the court explained that determining willful disobedience requires at least some inquiry to why the person failed to pay. A mere allegation of non-payment is not enough for probable cause of willfulness. It held issuing the warrant without considering reasons for non-payment violated the 14th Amendment because it effectively turned a fine into a jail time without due process. This is why Beck is powerful. Beck neuters Strieff. The synopsis: if jurisdictions require the ability to pay fines before issuing arrest warrants for non payment, there will be fewer poverty warrants in the first place, meaning fewer attenuations, escapes, for unconstitutional stops. The note, Harvard states the virtue of Beck like decisions is requiring ability to pay hearings not only before sentencing or incarceration, but before seeking arrest for non payment. Stop extortions. Of the Williams, Taint, Bearden loophole. So this is what how you actually weaponize it, right? Because at the end, Harvard prescribes is their prescription is explicit. Beck's reasoning should be adopted nationwide because it plugs the constitutional gap and helps prevent poor people from being jailed simply for being poor. Now, this is how we take it. At intake, identify poverty pipeline triggers early, as unpaid tickets, fines, costs, restitution, probation payments. How we actually put these together. Failure to appear tied to money or transportation. Any warrants they might issue. You go through these things, right? This matters because the thesis is that the failure to pay warrants are constitutionally catalytic. They create arrest events and weaken Fourth Amendment remedies. First thing we're going to do is attack the warrant. Timing and willfulness. Was there meaningful ability to acquire for the ability to pay before issuing the warrant? Did the system do the Pennsylvania style delay? Arrest first, hearing later. Because that's why you attack. These are the things that we do. You file your motion to quash, or basically recall the warrant. Why? Because of due process, equal protection, and the Bearden Beck theory. This is one of the ones I've used personally because I didn't use them to quash. I actually did a recall because I wanted to go to court. I'm that type of asshole. I don't care nothing about quash the warrant. Let's go to court. You say I'm supposed to be there, let's get there. You want to fight? Let's fight. So this is one of the things I have used. And then you go back and do suppression due through the strategy of Strieff that's in the air. And even if there was jail that was set up there, you're going to go through a bail mitigation. And even through that, anything that occurred through you being incarcerated, you have issues of job loss, housing loss, future barriers, indignities, coercive ripple effects. They support arguments, alternatives, and proportionality. These are the things that you can use and weaponize in your federal court case against them. And in closing, what the war on the poor means for defense ethics and strategy is this: poverty isn't abating; its consequences showing up in unexpected places, like diluted Fourth Amendment protection for people who have warrants only because they couldn't pay. And it ends with practicable maxims. It's easier to get an indigent person to court to explain why they can't pay than it is to get them to pay the money they don't have. It's easier to lock you up than it is to fight you in court. Criminal defense has to treat poverty and through their enforcement as part of the case. No background noise, because it is a warranty factor and a arrest accelerator and a constitutional offset. So, in the midst of doing all that, I'm say this. One of the things that you need to stay focused on is understand this is a mental game. This is not one of those things where it's just happening. If you generally, if you feel targeted, it's because you are. If you are looking at certain things in a certain light, you're not crazy. It's because that light is on. So even in these contexts, understand you have options. There are methods, but understanding and learning these methods aren't going to happen overnight because even if you look at or listen to some of the cases I spoke about today, I spoke about the usage of certain aspects in certain cases in certain motions. And in that, you weaponize your defense because again, it is a war on the poor, but you don't have to be a victim. And then you can hold them accountable for everything you lose. Now, it's not going to come back to you in a day. And hell, even in a situation, I'm going to be as honest as possible. Money does not change the after effects, but it damn sure it can change the condition of how it feels, which is why I gave you the story of my brother. So I love you guys. I'm probably going to be back on, not tonight. I was thinking about it, but I'm probably not. But I will see you guys on shit probably tomorrow morning. Let's start doing some morning shows. See what that look like. And Duck, don't forget, shoot me a actually shoot me an email because I don't remember I remembered speaking to who you were saying I spoke to. But yeah, shoot me an email and then we can get back on the phone. And thank you guys and good night.